going on, guys? So I'm back today to talk about another found footage film, which through my viewings in the month of October, I found that I watch a lot more found footage movies than I recently remembered. It's cool because when you watch a bulk of found footage films, most of them are pretty formulaic. They, have a similar plot structure, the way things are introduced are similar, but it's all about the execution and the performances of the actors. And I talk a lot about Shudder on my channel and how I find a lot of incredible movies on the streaming service, and they provide a lot of directors the ability to get their material out there when otherwise there wouldn't be a method for it other than to maybe dump it on Prime Video and hope that someone would watch it. Shudder having that ability to showcase specifically horror films and giving those artists a voice is something that's really unique and interesting. And after reading a couple reviews, I finally got around to watching a newer found footage film for me called Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. Korean filmmaking is just so incredible. You have movies obviously like Parasite that won Best Picture, and then you have movies that, like Old Boy, for instance, or The Handmaiden, and there's so many incredible directors that come out of Korea, and I'm always really excited to watch any films from Korea. And so I was really looking forward to see a found footage film from another country and how it would be approached. And I was pleasantly surprised by it, but I would say that I feel like the film as a whole is a mixed bag. The film introduces us to this guy who runs a YouTube channel where it's not really YouTube specifically, it's like a live streaming show where he visits these haunted places, they film it live, and they get viewers that way. And he hopes that visiting this specific asylum is going to get him viewership through the roof. And what he does is he has this tight-knit group of people he works with, but he also does open casting where he's in these new people that are able to shoot the video and to help them throughout this experience. And the beginning of the film is really what kind of makes it a mixed bag for me. I spend a lot of time building up this idea of the live streaming and not really specifically character development, because the characters aren't really super developed. They have small characteristics about each one of them that differentiate their character and that make them unique, but not enough to really care deeply for any specific character or their performance. And I feel like the runtime is a little wasted on that specifically. It's really about 50 minutes into the runtime of an hour-and-a-half movie where things really start to get kind of crazy. I think in a lot of films, specifically one I reviewed a while back, Grave Encounters, there's times where that's warranted and specific reason and choice for that. And I think in those movies, spend a lot more time building up the crew and each individual member, where in this circumstance, it's more just like trying to put in comedic brevity amidst something that's supposed to be a serious supernatural horror film. And that's where it kind of falls flat for me, and I was disappointed in that because I think the third act is some of the scariest and most well put together found footage I've ever seen. But because the beginning is such a jumbled mess, it's really hard for me to completely love this movie or even 100% recommend it. I'd recommend seeing it just to see that third act, but it's a little hard to get through. There were moments where I found myself looking at the time or glancing over at my phone at the beginning because it was just so unengaging at points. And at the beginning, there's a charm to this building up, the rapport between these people. But after a while, it feels so ham-fisted and like it's just recycling the same gag over and over again. So that was a little upsetting. These people, they go to this haunted asylum together, and at first, when we're introduced to these people, it's like the director of the film is he's in a tent outside of the asylum. The rest of them go in to shoot on video, and they're all using GoPros, which is really cool and a very unique way to shoot this with the GoPro style, where they have these GoPros attached front facing, and they're also carrying cameras. And so you get a lot of variation in the camera movement and the way the camera is placed, and I liked that about this movie. There's a very uniqueness to that specific element of it. There's some cuts in it at the beginning that are kind of jarring. It fades to black a lot, which kind of gets obnoxious after a while. It's almost headache inducing when they're first going in, and I understand it's like either them trying to convey glitching in the technicals or just bad editing, but that took me out of it too, where once they get in, it feels a little bit more adjusted and well shot. But yeah, it's a little clunky there at the beginning. They get inside and they do this ritual, which is kind of interesting. And you find out that these cameramen that the director, who's outside in a tent placed inside, are fucking with these other people that they brought on, and because they don't think anything's really haunted. They're going there to get views. He wants to get 1 million people watching this thing. And so they're messing around, and then obviously found footage trope hits where it's like, oh, real shit is occurring. And that's when the movie really takes off and becomes something special. And like I said, the big detriment to that is that it's 50 minutes into the movie. You're waiting so long for this to happen that payoff is worth it, but is it worth getting through that first 50 minutes? I almost feel like with how bland the beginning of the story is, I'd be willing to watch this again to where I would just cut into that like 45-minute mark and watch the end runtime, because there's some stuff that in this movie that like really sent chills up my spine. They're not relying on jump scares. There are jump scares in this, and I think they are warranted and they're paid off really well. But there's some really unsettling imagery in this movie. There's this scene where there's this woman's face and she's making this noise that is just absolutely horrifying, and it really shook me up quite a bit. The very end is really intense. It's very well shot. It looks great. The only problems I have, it's obviously in an asylum. You want the movie to be dark, but it's almost too dark. I look at something like Grave Encounters, for instance, where, you know, they use a lot of night vision and things are shot that way because as an audience member, you want to be able to see everything in the frame unless it's being intentionally hidden from our view for a purpose. And this movie is almost too dark to where sometimes it's really hard to see what's going on. And when they're trying to place something creepy into the frame, your vision is so blurred from it that it's hard to catch that 100%. But when it works, it really works. And when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. And I think that it is a very unique perspective on the found footage genre, and this way that they've brought in, like, the director is messing with these people and then it's all shit's really hitting the fan. Executed really well in the third act, but that first act of the movie really pushes it back on the found footage list overall, in my opinion. If I was ranking every found footage I've ever watched, I'd have to put it pretty low on the list simply because of that first act and how weak it is. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Gojiam Haunted Asylum. I think it is worth watching for the third act alone, but you've got to really get through the slog that is the first act of the film. So what did you guys think of Gonjiam Haunted Asylum? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. As usual, I love Shudder. I think they provide a lot of great movies for you to be able to watch. There's a lot of things I would never have seen if I hadn't had the streaming service. It's one of my favorite things to watch movies on, and I'd highly recommend you check out the streaming service if you've never used it before. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a great rest of your day.